You're providing a beautiful segue to my next question. As I mentioned in the intro, you've got the unique experience, certainly unique among biotech execs that I've interviewed on the Business Biotech podcast, in that you have some pretty solid regulatory experience in the EMEA. As I said, you were on the committee for medicinal products for human use there. And in your last response, you talked a little bit about sort of that regulatory paradigm and how it differs. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how does that experience in the regulatory realm influence your work as not just at ISCT, but also as a biotech CEO in the cell and gene space?
I think it's very simple. I mean, you need to understand your customer, your audience, right? And if you have been that customer, you're going to be the perfect provider of evidence, of benefit, of anything to your customer. So having been with the regulators, having been a regulator, I understand the expectations. I'm able to say, okay, if I was on that position, this is what I would like to see. When I was at that position, that's what I was provided to see. So if I'm now in a position that I need to generate the evidence, I know what my first customer, because if I take a product to the market and to the patient is my end customer, is the one who's going to get the benefit in the end. The physician is the one who's going to prescribe, but the first customer is going to be the regulator that is going to allow my evidence to take the product into the market. So understanding that the expectations of the regulators is going to make my job a lot better. So it helps me definitely in terms of my daily job of developing new medicinal products. But from an ISCT point of view, brings to the next level. I mentioned to you before that regulatory discussion. I chair that discussion with the regulators from all over the world, and I could actually tell them, look, what we're doing is taking your conscious, your discussion, your thinking into access to patients with a product. And being a player like you before, and now like what I'm doing now, enables me really to be able to share the discussion and take it the way I want to take it. So it has been very, very useful in terms of being able to understand the other side of the wall, to be able to take the learnings and the experience on this side of the wall. And at the same time, it gave me a fantastic network and an ability to really navigate these discussions. I think it's when I was a regulator, I used to say, I like to talk to industry, and either I am right and I will stand to my principles in the discussion, or I am wrong and I'm happy for whoever, industry or otherwise, tells me and convinces me. So, and that perspective of being able to be on both sides and being able to discuss confident and assured of what you're thinking, but be ready also to understand new arguments was instrumental for that experience then and what I've done afterwards.
Yeah. With the benefit of that regulatory experience, I'm curious about, I'm going to ask you to apply, I guess I'll ask you where you apply in the development process. Like, how early do you begin to apply your sort of regulatory perspective?
Day -1.
Okay.
Because it's the very, and I was actually on discussions yesterday in London with a group, and I was actually saying we will only know when we talk to the regulators. So we need to prepare our arguments and anticipate what the discussion is going to be, but as soon as possible have that engagement. It takes two to tango, and while you're doing the translational process of developing your product, you need to engage with the regulators as soon as possible, because you build the awareness, you learn on the discussion, and when you get to the final moment of getting your BLA or your marketing authorization, there's an history that both sides have gone through together, with different hats, different responsibilities, different perspectives, as it should, and then you know that the final outcome has been a rich, discussed process. So to your point, you need to think that from day one. But you should not go before you know what you're going to discuss and you have your own ideas. because you're not going there to be told what to do. You're going to go there to validate what you believe you want to do. And so you ask the question, you provide the answer, and you get the yes or no to your answer, not the question is yes or no to your answer. And so you need to be able to provide the answer. And my experience as a regulator helps me build that answer that I need then to validate it with the acting regulators currently.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is often overlooked or not thought probably deeply enough about is the fact that regulatory activity can be a rate limiting factor in terms of fundraising, right? Like raising the capital to keep your business going. So I'm going to ask you this question sort of from the Kiji perspective, from the biotech entrepreneur perspective. How important is it to translate early sort of the regulatory promise of something that you're working on and be able to communicate that to potential investors?
Yeah, nothing more expensive in developing a product than go to a regulatory discussion, having gone through a long process, and then having told your process stinks, you need to go back and do something else, right? Before you get a lot committed, you need to go along. So it's important that interaction. Now, it's also important that and we go back to that risk taking. I think life is always about taking decisions, and decisions involve risk. And the regulators have a responsibility because they need to manage the risk not for them, but the risk for who they represent, which is the use in the patients. But the risk is not only the risk of potentially consequences and side effects, but also the risk of not providing a benefit to patients. And I think the regulators always need to think these two things, which is the benefit risk. The typical equation of a regulator is I need to provide the benefit and I need to understand the risk. But if I overplay the risk, I will actually reduce the benefits and change the risk to the other side, which is the risk of not providing a good benefit to a patient in need. And so it is important to have all of that on your decisions and very quickly decide what you're going to do, take the decisions, challenge that with the regulators, and then develop the product and take it to the market. So it's important that as CEO, as DG, and we're about to take the study to a clinical trial, it's important that we engage with the regulators to make sure that we have the right package, we have the right evidence to go into the clinical trial. And once you have the clinical trial and the data, you're able to really go to the subsequent steps. So it is important to understand the regulatory people expectations and build it in your decision, in your process, because if you don't do it well, it can cost you a lot of money. Now, the other side is if you do it well and you have the regulatory validation of what you're doing, the investors that look at you and going to invest the money on two things, the technology and the people behind the technology, they will be confident that the people is making the right decisions. So 50% of the element is already assured. The other one is what it is. It's does it work or not? That's fine. That's the risk that every biotech investor is prepared to take. What you should not take is a risk on inadequate management, not taking the right decisions, not engaging with the right interactions, not doing the regulatory diligence that reduces the risk of developing the product.
This finesse around leadership of a company and management that you're getting at, where did it come from in you? I mean, your history as an academic, as a physician, as a regulator, as a scientist, speaks for itself. At what point did you decide to pursue entrepreneurship, and how did you equip yourself? Like learn it, right? Like learn the trade. You're talking about some nuanced, biotech management stuff right now. Where does that come from?
I think even before I finished high school, I was involved in a science forum in London, and I was taken as a student because I had good marks, and so they took me, and I participated in the science forum. And I liked it. And when I went back to Portugal, I said, I'm going to organize a similar thing for Portuguese students. And if I go back, I like to organize things. I like to bring people and try to understand what they like to do and get the puzzle using that. So it started there. And then obviously when I was doing my clinical work, again, back to the HIV, I set up the outpatients clinic and structured it again. So it's always been kind of a reflex of structuring. And I think it's important to always set where do we want to go, setting that vision, and who can play the different pieces of getting us there. Because if you adapt well, they will feel happy because they're doing something that we can do and enjoy, but also challenge them so that they grow. And consequently, you get a good puzzle. I'll give you another example. At a certain point in an organization, well, actually at BMS, we acquired another company, and my boss at the time came to me, I want you to do the integration of the two companies. And I said, I'll do it on one condition. I will handpick the team anywhere in the organization, and nobody will question who do I select.
When you say handpick the team, you're saying handpick the team that handles this integration?
Yes, I would say the different people, because I think that is essential in terms of building the team, integrating the different personalities, experiences, and interests, and growing people. And so, I mean, leading organizations, leading people, and growing people, and I could give you other examples. It's one thing that is fantastic. I mean, it goes back to having something as a raw material and then shape it. Developing a product is the same thing. Developing a person is also similar. And as you integrate the different pieces and have the vision of how is this going to all play together, it's also fun and very rewarding.
You started to get at, you're going to make a point and I interrupted you. You said one of the stipulations was I get to pick the team that handles this integration. No one's going to question it. I want to dig a little deeper on the whole no one's going to question it thing. Was there some creative thinking about the people that you wanted to have on that integration team?
It was.
You might have faced some objection if you didn't say, hey, no one questions me.
No, because I said I want the people for where I know them and for what they will be delivering. And you may say, well, that's not needed. I said, I believe it's needed. So judge me by the outcome at the end. So and obviously, I think I don't want to give the perception that nobody questions and it's a locked bit. I wanted to come across with that perspective, happy to learn, happy to change, but very clear on setting, this is the vision, this is what we need, this is what I believe contributes to that. If I'm told wrong and proven wrong, perfectly, I'll change. But it's important to make sure that we build to that objective, to that vision, and carry the people behind.